Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today I just wanted to go over my experience with Spypoint cameras, give you some of the pros, some of the cons, and some things to consider if you decide to go with a cellular camera route, and specifically Spypoint. Now, the 4 Spypoint cameras here do not comprise of my entire experience with Spypoint. I've actually owned and operated 3 or 4 other Link Micro LTEs that I can no longer use. We will get into why that is. I've also had the Solar Dark Cellular, which is the big brother to this particular camera, and at one point about 1 or 2 years ago was basically the flagship of the Spypoint fleet. That's getting sent back to the manufacturer as well. So the only one I really can't speak to in full is the newer Flex model, which is kind of just a step above the Link Micro LTE, and I have never owned or operated one. The biggest additions to that is you get a few additional characteristics, such as you can check the battery level in the field. It has little LED lights to indicate what the battery level is, as well as it can pick the best network for your area, whether that be Verizon or their nationwide network, which basically comprises of AT&T and T-Mobile. But overall, I just want to discuss durability, weatherability, reliability, image quality, things of that nature. I mean, all the things that make a cellular camera worth having a cellular camera. Does it work at the end of the day? This is the most reliable Spypoint camera I've had. It's been an area with pretty good service, and it's lasted 1.5 years. Knock on aluminum, it'll last a little bit longer. That's not great, considering I've operated 7 of these, and this is the longest lasting. It's something to consider when looking at the Spypoint. They don't have the best track record in that regard. I found the best way to make these things more reliable is, one, always format the SD card. Even when you go to check your SD card in here, go ahead and reformat it before placing it back in. And in terms of firmware updates, go ahead and get the latest firmware from Spypoint. And depending on where you're at, this is something that's aggravating because you have to remember to do this while you're at home where you have internet connection, if the place where you hunt or the area you hunt does not have internet connection up there. So something to keep in mind. Also, in the past, I don't know if this is an issue now, but I did a firmware update on 2 Link Micro LTs about 1 year or 2 ago, probably, and it crashed. Both cameras, they stopped working entirely, got in contact with Spypoint, which is a nightmare. We'll get into that in a second. And they basically said, tough luck. Here's a 30% discount code, basically. You can purchase some more cameras, even though we know it's our fault and that's our software that failed you. So that was very, very aggravating. They've gotten a little bit more lenient as far as getting replacements out there if you do have a camera under warranty. And the 2-year warranty is actually not too bad. I just had to do that recently. Again, we'll get into that. So overall reliability, not great. 1.5 years for this one. Where's another one? This one right here. It's been out here for about the same amount of time. I don't know how long it's been crashed out, but it just completely stopped working. The screen on the inside of the Solar Dark, it was completely on the fritz. It just was a bright white light, wouldn't do anything else. So really annoying in that aspect. Not much I can do after that. The problem is that when you're using Spypoint as security cameras for your property to make sure your stuff is secure in areas where you may not be up here all that much, that's concerning. So I really wouldn't recommend this as a security solution when you're away from a specific piece of property for a long period of time, which is disappointing because that was one of the applications these could have been absolutely phenomenal in if they worked. Did so. Reliability is not that great. Durability. Over on the LTEs, I actually haven't had too many durability issues. For the most part, I've had a pretty good time with durability. The O-rings in here, that's actually a brand new one, are in pretty good shape. They do a good job keeping out the water, things of that nature. You can see how thick that gasket is. So I couldn't be more pleased in that regard for these cameras. On the other hand, ironically, for their supposedly nicer models, these Link S Darks, they did a horrendous job when it came to keeping water out of the cameras. There's hardly a gasket around this area at all, and on top of that, the battery compartment on the back has a tiny little gasket that actually makes very poor contact with this little plate that closes, that it didn't keep water out at all. And I think that's the reason this one failed, as well as the Cellular S Dark that I'm also sending back. The Cellular S Dark, the one down in the swamp, it had water inside the compartment. It hasn't been underwater or anything of that nature, simply from rain, and it was drenched in here, and there were some contacts that were corroded. Not much I can do there. That is poor design and build quality. And when you say your cameras can withstand the elements, and I forget the exact IP rating, but essentially it's water resistant, and that just wasn't the case, and that's supposed to be your upper end model. Link micro LTEs, I think, are generally the way to go when it comes to Spypoint, unless you just really want a screen to look at in order to see what you're pointing at or things of that nature. But if you're familiar with cameras and trail cameras in general, and kind of get a good idea of where you want to locate that camera so it can view a specific area, I just don't see the need or the necessity of using these cameras. I want to say the difference between their infrared range is like 20 feet. Like the Link Micros are 80, these S Darks were 100 feet. That's not really that big of a difference at the end of the day. And when you're talking about getting that far out on most cameras, it becomes less significant. Here's the really annoying part about Spypoint. Even if the cellular aspect fails, the camera itself fails. It'll stop taking pictures. It seems like there's a complete crash in the camera itself, and that's annoying. If the cellular aspect just stops working, it should still be able to take pictures. I can't say how many times that seems to have happened with the Spypoint cameras, where it fails, the entire camera just goes into berserk mode, doesn't work anymore. Especially when you consider this. This is just a cheap, wild game, innovative camera. I have had it for, 4 years now. Still going strong. By far the most reliable camera it seems like I've used out here. And durable. For instance, this is a much cheaper camera than those Spypoints. Look at the gasket in that. That is a thick gasket, and when you close this, it makes good contact. You have to push this close before you can lock this latch. That's excellent. Versus these, once again, when it comes to weatherability, these aren't too bad. They actually do have some pressure on them that you have to push in order to close. Solar S Darks did not. Maybe they changed that and they fixed that. The camera plans and the quality. Image quality on these are actually pretty good. You're going to get lower resolution photos to your cellular device or your computer, simply because it's easier to transmit, things of that nature. But when you pull the SD cards out from these eventually, the quality is actually good enough to where you can determine, how many points are actually on that specific deer, or how large is that pig, or how large are the tusks on it. So I'm pretty content as far as that goes, and the video quality is actually pretty good, and it does a wonderful job triggering on game. There's many times where I've looked at videos or pictures and I'm like, what in the world is it triggering on? And all of a sudden I'll see 100 feet back, 80 feet back, there's a deer there that's just partially blocked by a tree that it managed to pick up that I wasn't able to hardly see with my eye. And that's all looking at a screen, zooming in, and all that stuff. So excellent job there for trigger times, things of that nature. What am I missing here? Oh, battery life. Battery life on these cameras has actually become very good, even up to, I think we got to 18 degrees one day. This camera tends to last, let me think, 2 to 3 months on a set of 8 AA batteries. And you may not think that's significant, but considering it's also transmitting a signal, and on top of that, the camera that we certainly have in some of these areas are submitting thousands of photos within that time as well. That's pretty good. I mean, there was one day where I got over 200 pictures, and I actually have a 10-second delay also set on that camera. And 3 months is a long time. This camera lasts about the same out 3 months, but it doesn't have cellular capabilities. It's not transmitting, anything of that nature. If you want to increase the amount of time, you don't have to worry about batteries, which is something I am all for. The cellular panels, the solar panels on these actually do an excellent job. If you get the lithium battery packs, I think I have an example here. Yes. This combination will last, goodness gracious, probably 6 months without having to touch a thing, sending quite a few photos. Another way to improve your battery life is by not having it send photos immediately after taking, but sending every couple hours or twice a day. That really does help longevity as far as the battery life in these cameras, and something I would highly recommend to everyone. The way to think about it is, unless you're using it for security purposes where you need to know immediately, which I don't recommend for these cameras, is it really going to make a difference whether you get it that minute or a couple hours later if you're 2 hours or 3 hours away from your property anyway? Probably not. So, do I recommend Spypoint cameras as a whole? Not really, no. They've got some issues they need to fix. There's some things they do great on. Like I said, photo quality is good. The app itself is very intuitive to use, and I think they actually did a good job on that. Customer service, it definitely needs a bit of help, but they need better quality products at the end of the day. And while I haven't used other cellular camera systems, I wouldn't be surprised if there were more reliable and more durable cameras out there for the same amount of money. Now guys, that's just my opinion, and hopefully you got something of it. If you did, please make sure to share, like, subscribe for more. And if you enjoyed today's video, please come back and watch again. Thanks for watching.